Welcome to She Sells Radio. Today, I get to bring you an interview with two dear friends and former clients of mine who are experts in cultivating a really strong relationship or marriage while you simultaneously grow your business. And this is a topic that we've been talking about a lot in our client community recently, as women are looking to call in both love and money. And obviously, we speak a lot in our community on the business and money side of things. But today, I wanted to bring you a couple who has devoted their life and their business to helping you elevate your relationship and your marriage so that you can have the best of both worlds. So, my guests today are Kim and Matthew Hoffman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, and then you're going to get to hear from them, and it's going to be really, really powerful. So, Kim Hoffman is the co-founder and co-host of Kickass Couples Podcast. She's an expert at being a kick-ass wife, which I love. Kim is an experienced, fulfilled, and successful wife who inspires couples how to pursue a meaningful, gratifying relationship with their soulmate. Kim's passion is to teach imperfect couples how to take their relationship from mediocrity to a powerful, committed, joy-filled love affair, which we're going to talk about today. I'm excited to dive into that. Matthew P. Hoffman is a national speaker, trainer, author, and kick-ass relationship coach who empowers men and women to become mighty and effective communicators through his expert guidance, business experience, and the vast resources of Kickass Couples Nation. Matthew and Kim, welcome to the show. I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's great to see you again.
It's so great to see you. And if you all are listening on audio and you can't see the video, we were laughing in the pre-chat because they're in Maine. You all are in Maine, like probably 30 minutes an hour from me right now, max. We've got this beautiful background of the woods at your lake house. And we were like, why did we not do this in person? So we may do a part 2 where we meet up in Maine in person, which I'm excited for. But, I want to dive in first and just start with a bit of your backstory. And I think here's what can happen is when we are experts in something, right? When we teach something, when we've built a brand around something, people think, oh, like they've always been good at that. They've never struggled with that. I know for myself, what I teach, it's all things I've had to overcome and learn myself around money and business and sales. And so I'm curious, and Matthew, I'm going to have you kind of lead with this question to start. People hear you speaking and training on how to create an amazing relationship. And obviously you all have cultivated a really beautiful relationship together. And people may think, oh, you've always just been great at it. But I'm curious about kind of the backstory and what led to your interest in this. Is this something that has always felt like a natural superpower for you? Or was there ever a period of, we'll call it contrast in relationship where you were bumping up against challenges that maybe helped to inspire the brand and what you all teach today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm grateful that we're working on our 30th year of marriage, Elise.
Wow.
And I can honestly say when we got married, I had no idea that it would be as good as it is right now. And because I didn't know how to get it there, I just thought you get married and there you go. It happens. And it's a romance that never stops, right? And, I'd say that probably after 20 years of marriage, all relationships are kind of in 3 stages. You're either on this slope and you're thriving, right? You're climbing that mountain and you're working hard and it's great. Or you are treading water, you're surviving, right? One more weight on your head, you're going under and you're not really making lots of progress, or you're in decline or DOA. And I'd say that after 20 years of marriage, we were surviving. It wasn't bad, wasn't great, but my wife and I were both, I was guilty of, when I could get a stab in and twist the knife or say things that weren't nice to get back at her, I was a little upset, I would do it. When she could enter an argument and prove to me I'd made a mistake, or I messed up again, she would do it. And most of our reaction to each other was not building each other up and supporting and fulfilling. It was kind of tearing down and needling and poking or bringing up past mistakes. And neither of us were super happy. Yeah. And I think that we kind of said, this is not what we want, not what we signed up for, and we're not happy. Right. And, I think that we really had to double down and learn what does it take? I mean, we read books, we watched videos, we got coached, we got therapy. And I think that the reason you work with a coach or somebody, this, none of us recognize what our own blind spots are. It's hard to look at the relationship and say, oh, here's the problems and here's what we got to do to fix it. And we'll just do this. It's somebody else going, nah, do you see this? And this is what I hear. And so I think we had kind of those coaches. The co-author of my book, Chris Cambus, worked with us, and we worked with other people. And it led me to kind of writing the book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex, to talk from our own experience of what I did in all of our marriage. And at that point, to kind of bring it back to where it's thriving and we're climbing that mountain together.
Wow. What was that? I'm curious, kind of that turning point for you. And Kim, maybe you can speak to this a little bit too, or just your own perspective on what Matthew shared there about when you were 20 years in, making that decision to change. But, when people are at that point, I think a lot of times the temptation is, okay, we're just not meant to be, right? And it's not to say that there aren't certain relationships where it's like, you've grown, you've ascended, and now it's time to complete and move on. And you can do so in a really conscious, beautiful way. Right. So, at least that's my take on it. But it sounds like for both of you, you really took a look inside and said, what am I bringing to this? And how can I consciously change the dynamic here so that we at least have a chance to keep growing together? So I'm curious, how long, when you started implementing what you all teach, how long did it take for you to start to notice changes? And maybe a part two of this is, did it have to start within you first? And I can kind of share my own experience, but I want to hear from Kim. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I would say that it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
So we really have to work on ourselves first. So we have to do that deep dive into ourselves and start asking ourselves some really hard questions.
Yeah.
Why am I not happy? What's going on here? And do I sense the commitment from my husband that, he's still committed to me and we can stay in this together and grow together? So I'm going to look inside and say, what can I do? What are some things that I can work on to become a better individual? And then what are some things that we can do together to work on so that we can have a better, happier, more fulfilling relationship? And I feel like, we were at a point where neither of us were really happy. We're just sort of stagnant, and we really wanted to keep our relationship going, but we just weren't really sure how to get there. And so implementing those things like enrichment, marriage enrichment is huge because it really teaches you how to be there for each other and how to learn the skills to be better and healthier in your relationship.
And what does that, for someone who's not familiar, what does marriage enrichment mean?
Again, Matthew said, we did videos and we read books, got coaching. We were really open to having some outside sources help us and coach us along. And that made all the difference in the world in our relationship.
I think that's the power of, and we speak about this, your paradigm in business, which will control your earnings potential. It'll control how clients relate to you. It's all this inner self concept of what I'm worthy of receiving, how I show up in business, how visible I am, how not. And we have this paradigm in all different parts of life, right? And so much of it was picked up on. I'd love to hear if either of you want to chime in on this. What we observed growing up, what we saw modeled, how we saw our parents relate to each other. And a lot of this happens before age 7, right? When we haven't fully formed our analytical brain and we're a giant walking subconscious. So it sounds like for you, it was having other people reflect to you, there's another way that you may not even be conscious of, right? Because I think a lot of times we just run on default, and I'm raising my hand as someone who's done that. And I'm consciously working on this in all areas of life, including relationship, but we can just run on default mode and kind of perpetuate these patterns that we maybe saw modeled growing up without realizing, oh my gosh, there's another way. There's a completely different way. Do either of you want to speak to that?
I think our families of origins play a huge role in how we show up in our marriage for our spouse. And I know that, we see that a lot with a lot of our clients. And so when we come to this marriage together and we each have sort of this baggage, right? I have my own set of issues and Matthew would come to their relationship with his as well. And so how are we really talking about those issues and working through those issues and really getting to the crux of what's going on?
Yeah.
I think that every relationship has issues and problems, Elise.
Yeah.
It's like, some people that you talked earlier about, when you get to the point, is this worth saving and can we do it, or am I going someplace else? The grass is always greener because we erroneously think that doesn't have issues. That over there on the other side of the fence doesn't have problems. And I tell all my clients, I go, you're going to have a bag of issues no matter where you go. Better to handle the ones you got now than exchange them for something else, because they're not going to be, they might be different or they might be the exact same. So if you're going to invest in this relationship, learn how to handle those issues and uncover them for what they are and put them in perspective and get the tools to work through them. And that's going to bond you and build a stronger relationship. And if you've never had the discussion with your partner or your spouse about how they experienced love and how you did and reconciled those, it's going to keep showing up in your relationship and be an issue. And so many couples get together. We never had that discussion until way into our relationship, till we learned you got to have the conversation. And those conversations uncovered things that I wasn't even aware of and certainly hadn't dealt with. And now she's aware of them. And, when we uncovered some of those things from my childhood, she looked at me and we had a deep conversation about a session we had with our coach. And she said, I'm not going anywhere. Right. I'm not going to, I know who you are, and I'm going to support you because I know that's what you need and how you need to be supported. But if we hadn't had that conversation, it never would have been brought out into the open, never would have been revealed, and we couldn't have worked through it. And having that conversation bonded us stronger together.
Can you speak a little bit more, Matthew, to what that, and Kim, please feel free to chime in, but what that conversation sounds like? So you said, had we never had the conversation about how we experienced love growing up, is this about finding out what your partner's love language is, or it sounds like it's deeper? Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks and sounds like if we want to have that conversation with our partner?
Well, in Kim and I, when we interviewed a lot of the couples on the podcast, we say, is what did love look like for you growing up? Easy question to talk about and get into, right? And so, in other words, by your mom, your dad, your grandparents, whoever raised you and formed you, how did you see love demonstrated? What does love look like? Meaning, this is how I saw my dad do it with my mom, or my mom do it with my dad, or my dad never did it and my mom always did, right? So we take those things and we go, I want to model this because I saw how great it worked. Or we go, no way in heck is that coming into my relationship, because it was horrible and it was brutal. I had a father who worked 6 days a week. His definition of success is definitely around possessions and money and status and impact and influence. And so my mother was, I wouldn't say she raised us, but she had a much stronger demonstration, influence, and tenderheartedness. So I learned about relationships and love more from her. I learned different things from my dad, but it wasn't how to be successful in a relationship, because there was adultery and affairs and things that, led to a divorce. So I didn't look at my dad and go, I'm going to model him on relationships. I said, I'm going to model my mom. And that's what I brought to this marriage and to this relationship. So I didn't have a great male example of love and tenderness. And so, we had to talk about that and learn how to deal with that in how are we going to raise our kids? How are we going to relate to each other? And, my mom and dad had screaming fights. So I said to Kim, I said, if you scream at me and raise your voice, I'm closing down. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to engage with you, because that happened growing up in their relationship, and it was time to tune out and get out.
Wow.
So she knows, and she may say, well, I have Cuban descent. I'm passionate. I get feisty. And I go, you raise your voice to me, I'm not listening.
we come to the new relationship with triggers, right?
Yeah.
And like he said, I can't come at him and raise my voice with him or get upset with him because it's going to trigger something in him, and he's going to back off, and he's not going to be able to respond, because what have I done? I've put him in flight or fight responsive mode, and he's going to shut down. And so so when we talk about learning what those things are, those are the tough questions and the hardcore work that you need to do to learn about each other's history and what's at the real crux and root of the problem, right? What are we bringing in here that's baggage, that's not good, that's not healthy, and why?
Yeah. What I'm hearing, and this is so powerful. There is I heard this from Bob Proctor once, a great quote, that what you don't heal, your children will inherit. And when I heard that, that struck me to my core, because I was like, man, what am I carrying around? These old patterns, these old paradigms, these old triggers, whether in relationship or self-worth or self-confidence, that maybe I didn't consciously choose to pick up on them. Maybe I didn't consciously choose them for myself, but they're in me. And now it's my responsibility to clear this if I don't want my kids to experience the same thing. And so I think what's powerful about what you're sharing, it actually models a process that we teach our clients called picking your board of advisors. And instead of just accepting that, not even questioning what you saw modeled growing up, right? Like Matthew, you said your dad pursued success, there was infidelity. And it's like, if you hadn't stopped to question and say, do I want to model off of that? You would subconsciously model off of that because that's what you saw demonstrated.
Right.
But instead, to be conscious, to say, do I want that outcome? If not, I need to learn to think like someone else. And we teach this concept called having a board of advisors. I've got a sticky note here on my computer of it's like people whose results I like. And I do it for business and life. But anytime I'm at a crossroads of how I want to show up in something, I ask myself, well, how would so-and-so think about this? How would they act? What thoughts would they have on it? And what I'm hearing you, it's helped me tremendously in business. What I'm hearing you say is almost something similar in marriage and relationship, where we can say, if I don't love the results that my parents had in their relationship or in certain areas, then I need to learn to think differently. And I need to, again, get a coach, get a mentor, get someone who can help me see outside the box of this paradigm that I've maybe been living in for a long time. But if I want to create a different dynamic in my relationship, I've got to learn to think like someone else, like someone who has a great relationship. So yeah, I love this. We're doing similar things in different industries. And it's just powerful to hear your perspective on this. I want to speak a little bit to Kim. I know one of your passions is helping a couple who's maybe finding themselves in a mediocre relationship, where it's like, it's okay, but it's not amazing. And taking that and transforming that into, use the word red hot, which it's like, we all want that, right? We want the red hot relationship. Doesn't matter how long we've been together. And I know we don't have time for all of it, but maybe one or two things that someone could do today if they're listening and they're like, if I'm being honest, my relationship is mediocre. We've plateaued. Maybe we're treading water, kind of like you all said you were a while back in your relationship. What can we do today to start to shift the energy from mediocre to that red hot dynamic that we are craving and seeking?
Yeah, that's a great question. We all want that intimacy.
Yeah.
We all want to feel that deep connection. And it does over time when we're really busy in our business. It goes to mediocrity, right? And why is that? Well, Matthew has this great chapter in his book that talks about eternal woo. What does that mean? Well, it means we're going to keep dating each other, and we're going to keep prioritizing each other. We're going to keep making time for each other. It might be date nights, special date nights. It might be finding an activity that we can learn or do together. But I think we have to be really intentional about making time for each other and making that time special. And I know we get busy, we get in the vortex of kids and business, and all these things are sucking at us and pulling us in different directions. But we really have to come back to prioritizing our spouse. making our spouse number one in our relationship, and then continuing those special, like I said, that eternal woo. You just keep dating each other.
Yeah.
And that's going to make us feel more emotionally connected to each other. More emotionally connected to each other because we've been spending all this great time together and we've been doing these fun things together. That's when, you know, the sex is amazing and all the other things come into play because we are emotionally bonded.
I'm curious, and I want to ask a follow-up, and then Matthew, I'll ask you a question too, but Kim, our audience is primarily female. Now we've got a lot of great men who listen too, but we got a lot of women listening in today. For someone who's listening and they're like, my husband doesn't date me anymore, or my partner doesn't date me. He doesn't take me out on dates. I don't feel like he pursues me.
Yeah.
You know, I think about if I were in a dating relationship with someone and they just kind of stop pursuing me, I'd probably just be like, okay, bye. It's a little different in marriage, but it's also, I don't know if it's our most powerful energy to come to someone and be like, I want you to date me. Why aren't you dating me anymore? Right? How does that look? Like, if we're a woman and we want our man to be pursuing us and dating us again, is it an inner energy switch? Is it a conversation? Is it both? Like, how do we activate that energy in him? And actually, Matthew, you could probably speak powerfully to this as well after Kim, right? From the male perspective, how do we activate that energy in our man to want to pursue us if maybe that hasn't happened in the relationship for a while?
Right. So the question is, you know, why aren't we pursuing each other? Why are we not feeling this emotional connection to each other that we are wanting to pursue each other? And I think that it starts with us. It starts with me actively pursuing him. Let me set up a romantic dinner. Let me, you know, think of a fun thing that we can do together that's different. So I'm starting it and I'm modeling for him. What does that pursuit look like? So I'm pursuing him with the hope that there's going to be some reciprocity. And usually when you're inspired to do something, it does inspire your spouse to reciprocate. Yeah. And so I would start there, but I also think it's important to have those conversations around, why are you not pursuing me? What's going on here? Let's really get down to what's really happening and start asking those questions of, you know, where's the intimacy gone? You know, do we need to talk more about us and our emotions? Do we need to talk about sex? Maybe we need to have a conversation about sex, right? So I think that you kind of have to look at all those things, but pursuing him is where I would start. And then also making sure that we're talking about how we feel, what our needs are, what our wants are, what our desires are.
Super powerful. Matthew, give us the male perspective on this. What would you add for a woman who's like, he stopped dating me, he stopped pursuing me?
It's important to everybody. I mean, whether, you know, it doesn't matter who is the breadwinner or if you're both breadwinners or who's bringing in more income, right? Everybody's got roles and responsibilities, but I can tell you that every man wants to be heard, understood, valued, and appreciated for who they are and what they do. We all have roles. And even though the roles are different in every relationship, the guy could be working, the woman could be at home, the woman, you know, vice versa. Both can be working, or you're both working, but she's the breadwinner and bringing in, you know, it doesn't matter. But every man wants to know that he's needed, valued, and appreciated. When I wrote an article that resonated with her, and she texted me the other day and said, "Oh my gosh, babe, you nailed it. Wow. Loved what you said about this. It was so right. And I really felt it." And I was like, "You're reading my article? Wow." You know, she goes, "Of course I am." You think, but that made me feel, hey, she values me. The work that I'm doing is important. And she's sharing with me how it impacts her. So she's pouring into me, right? Yeah. Love languages are part of it, but every man wants to feel needed, appreciated, heard, valued, understood. And we experience it a little differently than women. Men are experiential, right? Come do this with me. Watch this with me. Let's go, right? So when she and I are engaged in something together, it could be cooking, it could be goat yoga, it could be a ruck. You know, maybe she said, "I want to go paint pottery," whatever. Sometimes that's what I want, but I'm thinking, wow, we're relating, we're together, we're experiencing. And that's how I and most men experience connection. Women are incredibly emotional. And if a woman is emotionally connected to her partner, she's ready for everything else. But if that emotional connection isn't there, because the guy's not talking from his heart, he's not sharing, he's not communicating, he's not connecting, she doesn't want to go be intimate. She doesn't want to connect physically or sexually, because you don't understand me, you don't see me, you don't hear me, you don't feel me, right? So it's learning. We've each learned what we both want, need, and desire in a lot of different areas of our lives, and we're committed to giving it to each other. And so sometimes it's similar stuff, but I know that there's things that she wants and needs more than I do. And it's our pleasure to give it to each other. And when she's that way to me, it inspires me to say how we take turns giving in all areas of our lives. And one of the best things is that sometimes it's all about me, and she's like, no, babe, this is for you. I don't want, don't need, and don't. And then it goes, well, okay, I've got to create that experience for her. It's got to be all about her. She just spoiled the heck out of me for Father's Day, spoke my love languages, and we had an amazing time. But if you ask her about what was Mother's Day like, she'll probably, she can tell you what was Mother's Day like.
Same for me. So, we just keep showing up for each other. We know what we each need from each other, and we just keep showing up. And it doesn't have to be big things. It's the little things day in and day out. It's showing up in those ways that I think are most important.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I love this kind of behind the scenes of the male psyche. This is super helpful. And then Kim, your perspective on it too. What I'm hearing you say is, if I feel like my partner isn't showing up for me the way I would like them to, all I can control is me. So how can I start pouring into them and showing up for them and see what happens, right? See what unfolds. It will likely inspire them to start showing up differently. But all I can control is me. Is that kind of a synopsis?
And to add on to that, and I always talk to my clients about lead with yourself. You are who you are because it's who you are, not because what you're going to get by being who you are.
Yes.
Your values, principles, Elise, what you do in business and how you relate to your husband is about who you are. Not, well, if I do this for him, then he'll do that. Not quid pro quo, right? So when as one person in this relationship, if the woman says, all right, I've shown up, I'm giving him what he told me he wants and needs, he's like, oh, this is awesome. And he's not doing it. You've earned the right to say, hey, babe, you really like the way I'm showing up. Oh my gosh, you're awesome. Can I share with you what's important to me and the way that you can best support me and showing up for me and getting my needs met as well? You've earned the right. You've earned the right because you're doing it. You're not saying you never, you won't, you always, you can't, and you're not showing up for them. You haven't earned it. Right. But if you, oh my gosh, I'm so happy, content, fulfilled. My love tank is full. Okay. Let me share with you. Let me give you my roadmap. Right. Let me share with you the way that you can best support me and help me getting my needs met.
Love that. Super powerful. I want to ask you both a question, and this is something that's come up a lot on our community calls recently, where the women come into our community and they start ascending and they start growing and they start learning and they start developing, and they're growing their business. They're shifting their self-worth, they're up-leveling their mindset. And it's like, they're growing tremendously. And not for everyone, but for more than one, the complaint I hear, it's not really a complaint, but it's the question I hear is, I'm growing so much and so fast, and my partner's not. And it's causing friction in the relationship. What do I do? And I think, and some of the women are conscious enough to say, like, I'm scared to ascend to another level because I'm afraid I'm going to leave my partner behind. And we can actually subconsciously, like, we can sabotage our money success, our business success, because we're afraid we're going to be alone. We won't be able to be in our partnership or our relationship because we've outgrown it. How do we begin to approach that with our partner if we're noticing, man, I'm really growing here, and they're not, they're staying where they are? What does how do we even approach that? Matthew, I'll lead with you, and then Kim, I'd love for you to jump in with anything else
Sure.
that you'd like to share.
You know, at least when I work with anybody, you know, they may say, hey, I want to work with you professionally on how do I be strong relationships, communication.
Yeah.
I always come back to the personal side, because when you have success in the personal relationship, it informs and overflows everything, right? So having a growth mindset is critical. And, you know, you're on this journey for life with this person and you're growing. It should be as exciting for them as it is for you. Because if your needs are getting met, my success, she takes delight in my success. She's not like, oh, there he goes again. You know, he's making, he's doing. But I can tell you what, there was a time in our relationship, Elise, where she would say, why are you reading another self-help book? Don't. And she's laughing because she would say, oh my gosh, you have so many books. And I said, because I'm a student. I said, I don't have it all. And if I can read a book or experience a course and I can get one thing that I can go, ooh, I can use that, I'm making myself stronger. So she used to criticize me or make fun of me, kind of jab at me. And then she was kind of like, well, wow, he's growing.
He's outgrowing me.
Yeah, maybe I need to get on that bus. And she did. And I didn't say you gotta and you're gonna and do it the way I'm doing it, but she did it her own way. She went to Bible study. She started reading books. She said, let's do a video course together. Right. You know, and so when you're growing and your partner isn't, as a point of friction, you can invite them and open up and say, if they're not happy for your success, it means that they're not celebrating you and they're not, you know, and we all have those seasons and times. And when I work with a couple or an individual, I say, listen, you may outgrow them. There's going to come a time where you can say, hey, I'm on this great ride. Will you join me? And they can either go, I'm going to get on the bus and start learning, not doing your journey, not going where you're going, maybe, but either you have a growth mindset, because relationships, Elise, our relationship has been a roller coaster, high valleys, mountain peaks, kids, birth, mental illness, family issues, business issues, right? Court cases, you name it, right? And so we've all been in those valleys and those mountain peaks. And if we weren't doing it and in it together, it would be a clear indication that there's an issue. So we can either fix the issue and say we can get on the same page, or it's a break from or a break with. And so there's going to come a time, and that's a scary conversation, but it's like, I'm invested in you and your growth and your success. I need you to be invested and prioritize me as well. Yeah. It's not 50-50. It's not I do half, you do half. It's 100-100. And I think that's one of those fierce conversations that you may have to have. I'm committed to you and I love you and I'm prioritizing you. All I want is for you to do the same for me.
Wow. Kim, from your perspective, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hopping on that bus, like you said, I mean, I could have either just been left behind in the dust, or I could have hopped on the bus. And I did choose to step up, and it really started with my own individual growth first, because I'm not going to be where he is. He's already been doing the work, and I haven't been doing the work. And so I had to work on me and really, decide what I needed and what are some things that I'm lacking in, and how can I better myself so that I can show up for him in a really positive and meaningful way. And those are baby steps sometimes. But I really did do the homework, and then implemented, just some different strategies to be able to meet him where he is. And it wasn't easy, but once I started learning and growing and changing, and wow, all of these things just came to me that, I've just opened up all these beautiful windows into my relationship by having that will and desire to have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you can either be left in the dust or you can hop on that bus and you can do it for yourself. You have to do it for yourself first. Yeah. But once you do it for yourself, you can see how your relationship will grow and flourish.
Yeah. And there's seasons, at least. There was a season where she had a job, it was going to be a year long at our kids' school, ton of responsibility, ton of stuff going on. And I knew for the next year that I had to support her a specific way because she was in the spotlight and she was shining. And I
Yes.
was fine with that. Wasn't going to be home a lot. Wasn't going to be doing the things I wish and hoped that she was doing as much, but we talked about it. I knew it. There's a beautiful little boy right there. See?
Life and business. Sometimes your kids walk in on a
They're
podcast
intertwined. It's
interview.
awesome. I love it.
Hey, Betty. I've been in it for those of you who are listening. My son just walked in. We're in an interview, baby. You can listen in, okay?
I love it.
Yeah.
So that was one of those seasons where I had to be going, not my ego, well, how come I'm not number one? She still loved me. She still appreciated me. But I knew, you know what? It's her time in the spotlight. And I'm going to focus this year on making sure, A, she's shining. I'm picking up a little more slack at home with the kids and my job and things that normally would happen. I'm not going to complain because she's where she's supposed to be, growing and learning and demonstrating. And a lot of guys struggle with that. A lot of women might struggle with that if they're growing in the business and leading in that way.
Yeah.
So we all have those times in the spotlight where the other spouse is like, I got you, and I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah. This is so powerful. I want to ask one final question and then ask where people can connect with you. So what's so beautiful when we have men on the show too, is I love to give them an opportunity to celebrate the women in their lives. And so I want to just ask you, Matthew, from your perspective, what is it that makes Kim such a kick-ass wife for you?
She prioritizes me, Elise, above our human relationship is number one to her. I know it. I'm not number one in her life. You know, we have a strong faith. So I know it's God first and me second. And I wouldn't have it any other way because that's my same commitment, because our faith walk is in who we are is huge to our relationship. It binds us together. And so she's kick-ass because she's got that commitment to faith, which is important to me. It informs and strengthens our relationship and her as an individual. But then after that, I know that there's no one else and nothing else more important to her than me. And she shows me, she tells me, and she does things that make me feel it in big ways and small ways all the time.
Wow. That's so powerful. Thank you both for this. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I know that you all have an amazing podcast. You also offer coaching for couples. Will you share where people can go to connect and learn more about your work and working with you if they want to hire you?
Yeah. MatthewPHoffman.com. And you can look at, we've got 138 episodes of the Kickass Couples Podcast. People can find us on any platform and listen to those. We've got so many great resources. At least I do free relationship assessment calls. If someone's like, okay, there's an obstacle, there's a roadblock, there's a barrier, I don't know how to get around it or through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm kind of a mission-driven messenger, and just we're just trying to promote our uniqueness in the service of others. And we love to help people get to where they want to be and get their own relationship nirvana.
Amazing. Thank you. We'll link the website in the show notes. I appreciate you all. Thank you for this conversation. And you all are just doing amazing work. So thank you. I've learned a lot and grown a lot today just listening to you. So thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Love to connect with you, Elise.
Absolutely. All right. To you, my listener, I hope that this has inspired you to either reinvigorate the relationship you have, or if you're looking to call in a partner, to think about, how can I show up for that person before they're even here in my physical world, right? Who do I want to be to create not just an amazing business, but also an amazing love relationship in my life? So as always, thank you for being a listener of She Sells Radio, and I'll see you on our next episode. Bye.